All right, kiddos, let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the test questions. We will start with test question number 6. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Here is test question number 6. Venus read an average of 2.3 books each week during the year. Write an equation that represents the amount of books that she read, Y, per week, X. All right, so let's read it again. It says Venus read an average of 2.3 books each week during the year. Write an equation that represents the amount of books that she read, Y, per week, X. All right, so this seems really complicated. And for those of you who aren't very algebra minded, it might be pretty confusing. So one thing that I would recommend that you do with this problem is to create a table, right? I'd call the left side of the table X. I'd call the right side of the table Y. And remember that X represents your number of weeks. All right, that's what I'm told right here, and Y represents the number of books that are read. All right, and so I can go ahead and fill in the information that's given to me in this first sentence into this table. It says she reads 2.3 books each week. So in 1 week, she reads 2.3 books. In 2 weeks, she would read another 2.3 books, which would give me 4.6 books. How did I get that? Well, I did 2.3 times 2. In 3 weeks, she would read another 2.3 books, which would give me 6.9 books, and so on. So this table should make sense because all I did was a tiny little bit of math. I did some multiplying. And what you should notice right here, at least should start to look kind of familiar, is that to get from 1 to 2.3, I multiplied by 2.3. To get from 2 to 4.6, I multiplied by 2.3. And to get from 3 to 6.9, I multiplied by 2.3. And so this should look very familiar to you because this is what we call our constant of proportionality. So 2.3 is the constant of proportionality. It is what's constantly happening between our numbers. Every week, she continues to read 2.3 times as many books as the number of weeks. Okay, so how could we represent this in an equation? Well, there are a couple of ways, and the way that Sal Khan taught you was that we already know that Y over X is how we get our constant of proportionality. We take our Y value and we divide it by our X value. And so we already know that Y over X is 2.3. We've figured that out. All right, now to write this as an equation, well, this is an equation, but unfortunately it doesn't appear as A, B, C, or D. So we're going to need to do some manipulating of this in order to get it to match an equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation for Y. I'm going to get rid of this divided by X. And in order to get rid of a divided by X, we're going to use the opposite operation. So we are going to go ahead and multiply both sides by X. Right, and X times Y over X, these are going to eliminate or cross cancel, and we'll be left with Y. And 2.3 times X is 2.3X. So this is another form of that equation. It's the exact same equation, it's just written a little bit differently. And as a matter of fact, this equation does appear. It's letter C. So this is the correct answer. And this should just make sense to you if you look at it algebraically. So let's just fill in, instead of the letters, we're going to fill in those words that go with the letters. So instead of the letter Y, we're going to read it as the number of books. And instead of the letter X, we're going to read it as the number of weeks. All right, so let's read this equation using those words. So it says that Y, or the number of books, so the number of books is equal to 2.3 times, because it's squished right next to it, times whatever your X value is, which is the number of weeks. All right, so I'm going to erase this for a second. Times the number of weeks. All right, and so that makes sense. The number of books she reads is going to be 2.3 times the number of weeks. So this equation matches this algebraic equation, and it matches the constant of proportionality, which is 2.3, and it matches the overall idea. Copy down what you want. Meet me on question number 7. All right, question number 7. Terrell cooks at a restaurant. He uses 25 potatoes to make mashed potatoes, which feeds 85 guests. Which of the following ratios illustrates how many potatoes he would need to feed 200 guests? All right, I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to look for the two things that we are comparing. Terrell cooks at a restaurant. He uses 25 potatoes to make mashed potatoes, which feed 85 guests. The two things that I see that we are comparing are potatoes and guests. So if I were to set up this fraction or the setup, it would be potatoes compared to or out of guests. All right, so there's my setup. And now I'm going to try and create a proportion that properly shows us this set of information. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in what I know. I know there are 25 potatoes for every 85 guests. All right, I'm now going to go ahead and continue reading the problem. It then says, which of the following illustrates how many potatoes P he would need? Whoops, I think that's supposed to be orange. Potatoes P he would need to feed 200 guests. All right, so if I'm color coding, I would put I did that completely backwards. Did anybody else notice that? My color coding was completely wrong. Okay, so my potatoes is supposed to be red. I apologize. And my guests are supposed to be orange. So he would have P potatoes out of 200 guests. All right, so this is the proportion that I initially created. I'm going to look and see if any of the proportions that are listed match it. And as a matter of fact, one of them does. It's letter B. Now, just as a point, ladies and gents, I can do a lot of things to this overall proportion, right? I can flip it any way I want to, just so long as I keep all of this stuff proportional. So watch what I could do. If I wanted to, I could do guests over potatoes. All right, now if I flipped it upside down, that would mean that I have to flip upside down all of the information on the fractions as well. So instead of my guests being on the bottom, they're going to be on the top. So that would give me 85 on top and 200 on top. And for my potatoes, I would have 25 on the bottom and P on the bottom. And if I look for this proportion, you're going to notice that this 85 is on top, but the P is on top here. So this cannot possibly be correct. So it's not that this is the only proportion that is correct. It's just that it's the only one that's written properly, comparing potatoes and guests. Okay, it's not asking us to solve it. It just asked us to match it up to the right proportion. So we are done with this problem. All right, to get to the next question, I am going to change screens because it is a drag and drop question. All right, so now we are looking at question number 8. This one says, the unit price of a sweatshirt is $18. Remember, unit price means the price for one item. So when you see that a unit price for a sweatshirt is $18, that means that one sweatshirt is $18. Right, that's what a unit price means. The cost, C, of N sweatshirts is represented by this equation. C equals 18N. So the cost of my sweatshirts is equal to 18 times the number of sweatshirts I purchased. That should make sense. So if I purchase 5 sweatshirts because I have 5 people in my family and I want them all to have matching sweatshirts, I'd take 18 times 5 and it would give me my total cost. In this problem, it wants me to drag these numbers to create proportional relationships. I want you to drag each number to the box where it belongs. And it does tell you that some numbers may not belong in any box, right? So I have a couple of choices here. I am actually algebraically going to tell you or suggest how you should do this problem. If you take this equation of C equals 18n, and notice that my n is on the left side of my box, that means that the number 4 is going to be used in place of the letter n. So in this equation of C equals 18 times n, instead of the letter n, I'm going to put in the number 4. So 18 times 4. Okay, I then go ahead and I do the math. I do 18 times 4. 8 times 4 is 32. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So I would take this number 72, which would be the cost of 4 sweatshirts, and I would drag it into this box. And it would then be used. All right. And then I could follow that same exact process for the other numbers for 5 and for 6. So instead of it being 4 sweatshirts, let's pretend I'm going to buy 5 sweatshirts. So I could do 18 times 5 off to the side. 8 times 5 is 40. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 4 is 9, which would mean that 90 would be the answer for the box next to 5. Okay, because these numbers just are increasing by 1, I could also, instead of multiplying 18 times 6 for this last box, I could just add another $18 sweatshirt onto this price, and I would get 108. All right, so that's one way to do it. Of course, I could have just taken 18 and multiplied it by 6, and that would have given me my answer as well. 18 times 6 is still going to be 108. So 108 goes in this box. And that's all that I'd have to do for this problem, is to figure out which numbers went in which boxes. Go ahead and copy down what you want and meet me on question number 9. All right, question number 9. I'm just going to stop sharing and reshare again just to make sure I'm showing the right thing. That was a lot. All right, so question number 9 says, at the end of the summer, Chandler's video store had a sale. Chandler picked out a game on sale for 25% off of the original price of $59.99. He also picked out a headset for 30% off of the original price of $79.99. How much money did Chandler save? Big question. We are trying to figure out how much he saved. All right, so there are a couple of different ways you could approach this problem. What I taught you in class is different than what Sal Khan taught you. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to teach you or show you how to do it my way, because I suggested it and hoped that you would use it. And I also reviewed it in class. So this is what I taught you. I taught you to find percents of numbers. The easiest way, or one of the ways to do it, is to take part over whole equals percent out of 100. Okay, so I'm going to show it to you this way for the 25% off of the original price. And then I'll show it to you a different way for the 30% off of the other headset. And so you'll have 2 different options on how you want to do the math. Okay, so we are trying to figure out 25% off of the original price of $59.99. Okay, and to use this proportion, we just need to figure out where all those numbers go. So the first number is pretty easy. It's 25%, and because it's got that percent symbol at the end, it's pretty obvious it's going to go where the percentage symbol is. So I'm going to recreate this fraction. All right, this is kind of my setup. Remember that the number 100 always goes underneath your percent. And in this case, because I'm taking 25% off, I'm going to put 25 right here. All right, and then it says part and whole, and I need to know which kind of number this is. Is this part of the number, or is this the whole amount? And so Chandler picked out a game at an original price of $59.99. That would be my whole amount. The whole amount of that game is $59.99. I'm trying to figure out what part of it is. I'm trying to figure out what this 25% is. So that's going to be my unknown, right? So I'm going to call that X. Now I have this proportion that I can solve. Again, if I wanted to try to figure out how to get from $59.99 to 100, I could. I don't prefer that. I'm just going to solve this algebraically. We're going to use cross products. So we're going to multiply $59.99 times 25. And then we're going to say that that's equal to the cross product of 100 times X. All right, so I'm going to use my calculator here to do the math. I'm going to do $59.99 times 25. And I get this crazy number of 1,499.75. I am now going to divide that by 100 to get X by itself. And remember, when we divide by 100, we're just moving our decimal point 2 places to the left. So I get 14.9975. All right, technically, ladies and gentlemen, what am I finding out? I'm finding out what part of that $59.99 that I save. I'm figuring out what 25% of it is. I'm figuring out how much of it is on sale. So this is a dollar amount. This represents money, and it's not written in money format, right? Money format usually has dollars and then 2 cents, 2 digits for cents. So what I should be doing is I should be taking this 7 and I should be using it to round. 7 rounds up. So this 99 cents is going to turn into a dollar, which means that I'm really saving about $15 on this particular game. Okay, so I know that Chandler is saving $15 off of the game that he's picked out. And I'm going to go ahead and write that up here. Okay, you can certainly use this part over whole equals percent over 100 for the second part. Do the exact same thing for the headset, where 30 is your percent, it goes instead of the red 25, and $79.99 is the whole amount of the headset. So you'd put that there instead of the orange $59.99 and solve. However, I know that there's another way, and there's quite a few ways on how to solve this problem. So I'm going to show you another way to do this. All right, I'm going to kind of block this off. And what I'm trying to figure out is, what is 30% of $79.99? Okay, so the second way that we could look at this is simply by converting our percent to a decimal and knowing what the word of means, right? Hopefully by now in 7th grade math, you know that the word of means to multiply, right? And hopefully you also know in 7th grade that 30% written as a decimal is 30 out of 100. Decimals are always, percents are always out of 100. And if I write 30 out of 100 and I do my division, 30 divided by 100 is going to give me 0.30. So another easy way to solve this problem would be to take 0.30 and multiply it by $79.99, because remember, of means multiply. So 30% of $79.99 is the same as 0.30 times $79.99. And I could just take my calculator and I can do 0.30 times 79.99. And I'm going to get this crazy number, which is $23.997. And again, we're talking about money. We're figuring out how much money Chandler gets to save. So money is always dollars and then 2 digits for cents. I'm going to use the 7 to round. It rounds up, turning this $23.99 into $24. All right, so if I'm doing my math properly, I know he's saving $15 on the game and $24 on the headset. How much did he save all together? The last step is then to add. I'm going to add the $15 he saved off of the game, plus the $24 that he saved off of the headset, and I'm going to get $39 saved. Copy down what you like. Meet me on question number 10. Okay, question number 10 says 50% of a number is 24. What is 25% of the number? So this one's a little bit tricky. It gives us a lot of information. There are multiple ways you can solve this problem, but again, I'm going to go back to the one formula that I suggested you use, which is part over whole equals percent over 100. Now, if you were looking at my slides and paying attention in class, you would know that this could also be written, this is also known as is over of equals percent over 100. Now, this is sort of a Scanlon thing. This isn't really mathematical, but it helps you guys remember what goes where. Sometimes the hardest part is figuring out what's the part and what's the whole. So when we use these words is and of, it kind of tells us which number goes where. Whichever words or numbers closest to the word is your numerator. Whichever number is closest to the word of is your denominator. So let's go back into the original problem and see if we could figure this out. I'm going to cross out the second half of the problem because we need to figure out what the first half is before we can do the second half. All right, let's pull the information that we have. It says 50% of a number is 24. All right, now if I'm going to use this setup, I see that is 24. That means that that portion is 24 is going to go in my numerator by the word is. So I'm going to put 24 on top. Okay, remember the setup is always a fraction is equal to something over 100. It also tells me that 50% of a number. So 50 is my percent, that's going to go as my percentage, which means that I am trying to figure out whatever this is down here. That's my unknown. I'm going to call that X. All right, now again, I could try to figure out how to get from one number to the other, but this one's not obvious. So instead, I'm going to choose to use cross products. So I'm going to do 24 times 100 equals 50 times X. I'm going to go ahead and multiply 24 times 100, which gives me 2,400. To solve that equation, I'm going to divide both sides by 50 to get X by itself. And I end up with X equals 2,400 divided by 50, which gives me 40. So I'm not done. And you can see that that number doesn't appear here, although if it did, I shouldn't pick it because I didn't finish the question. So the question says, if 50% of a number is 24, well, I can now rewrite that as if 50% of, and this is the number, if 50% of 48 is 24, and that makes sense, right? Half of 48 is 24. Let's read what the second part of this problem says. What's 25% of that number? So we're trying now to figure out what 25% of 48 is. That's our goal now. Okay, so now we're going to do step 2. There are a lot of ways to do this. For those of you who are really good with number sense and percentages, you know that 25% is about a fourth. It's a fourth of it. So I could take 48 and divide it by 4, and it would give me 12, which is the correct answer. The other group of you I just completely lost, and that's okay. So I'm going to show you how to do it using this formula again, or we're going to actually do this in 2 different ways. We're going to do it the formula way, and then we're going to do it the easy way. All right, so the formulas, for those of you who really need something concrete to fall back on, says what is 25% of, find out what 25% of 48 is. Okay, so of 48, that's our total amount. So in this case, I have that fraction is equal to something over 100. The 48 is my entire amount. So that's going to go down here. That's my whole amount. My 25% is the percent. That always goes over 100. And so the unknown is what that amount really is, right? What is 25% of that number? That's my unknown. And again, I don't know how to get from 48 to 100 very easily, so I am going to use cross products. So I'm going to do 100 times n is equal to 48 times 25. I get 100n equals whatever 48 times 25 is, which is 1,200. Then to solve this, I'm going to divide both sides by 100. And I get n equals 12. Two-step problem. You have to figure out the first half of the problem before you can figure out the second half.